I deployed to Afghanistan expecting the usual dangers of war: enemy contact, harsh terrain, and the uncertainty that comes with every mission. But during that deployment, I witnessed something that I still struggle with to this day. The thought of it sends a chill down my spine every time it crosses my mind. I rarely talk about it. Most of the men who were there don't either. Not because we forgot, but because some things we witnessed are so unsettling, so far outside the norm that most people simply wouldn't believe it. It was late 2002, not long after the war had intensified in the southern regions. Our Special Operations Unit had been rotating through missions across the Kandahar province. Long patrols, reconnaissance, sometimes searching for missing personnel in the mountains where helicopters couldn't easily reach. One afternoon, our team was briefed on something unusual. A small reconnaissance squad had gone missing while investigating a cave system high in a rocky valley about 80 miles outside Kandahar. No distress signal, no radio contact, nothing. These cave systems were known to be used by insurgents for storage and movement. The recon team was supposed to check the area and report back. But after their final transmission, they vanished. No distress call, no follow-up communication, just silence. The last message they sent was brief but strange. They reported discovering a large cave opening high along the ridgeline, far larger than expected, and mentioned what appeared to be scattered bones outside the entrance. They were going to investigate. That was the final radio contact anyone ever received from them. 2 days later, our team was assigned to locate the patrol and determine what had happened. At the time, none of us thought this mission was unusual. Recon teams disappear sometimes. Ambushes, equipment failures, accidents in rough terrain. But the moment our helicopter set us down in that valley, a deep sense of unease settled over all of us. Afghanistan is rarely quiet. Even in remote regions you hear something. Wind moving through rocks, distant animals, insects. But here, the air felt heavy, like the valley was holding its breath. We began moving along the ridge path toward the cave coordinates. The hike was slow and steep. Loose stones shifted beneath our boots as we climbed. The cliffs around us rose sharply, forming narrow walls of dark red rock. The deeper we moved into the valley, the darker the shadows became. About 20 minutes into the patrol, the man walking point suddenly raised his fist. Everyone froze. He crouched and pointed toward the ground. At first it looked like nothing. Then we saw it. A broken piece of tactical equipment. One of the missing team's radio antennae. A few feet away was a helmet. Then someone spotted the blood. Dark stains spread across the rocks like something violent had happened there, and happened quickly. But there were no bodies, no signs of a firefight, no shell casings, just abandoned equipment and the eerie quiet of the valley. We continued forward with weapons ready, and then we saw the cave. It sat halfway up the ridge wall like a massive opening carved directly into the mountain. Even from a distance, it was clear that it wasn't a small cavern. The entrance alone had to be 20 feet tall, but that wasn't what unsettled us. What surrounded the cave was far worse. Bones. Dozens of them. Some scattered across the ground, others piled near the entrance. Some looked old and weathered, others looked disturbingly fresh. We spread out cautiously, scanning the cliffs and cave mouth for movement. That's when the rocks started falling. At first, it sounded like loose gravel sliding down the slope above us, but the sound grew heavier, louder. Something was moving inside the cave, and then it stepped into the sunlight. For a moment, none of us reacted. Our minds were trying to process what we were seeing, because standing at the cave entrance was something that didn't look human, and yet wasn't entirely animal either. The figure was enormous, easily 12 to 15 feet tall. Its shoulders were wide like a boulder. Its skin looked pale and rough, almost gray in the sunlight. Long, dark hair hung over its shoulders, and a thick beard covered most of its chest. In its hand was a spear, not a modern weapon, a crude one, long, thick, and sharpened at the end like something made centuries ago. The creature looked down at us with what I can only describe as hostility. Then it roared. The sound echoed violently through the valley walls. It wasn't a scream like a human voice. It was deeper, primal, like the sound of something ancient defending its territory. Before anyone could say a word, it charged at us. One of our teammates was closest to the cave entrance. He barely had time to react before the giant closed the distance and drove the spear straight through him. The force lifted him off the ground. Training took over instantly. Contact front! Our squad unleashed a wall of gunfire. Rifles erupted simultaneously, rounds striking the creature's torso and shoulders. Dust exploded around it as bullets slammed into rock and flesh. But the giant didn't drop. It staggered, roared again, and kept advancing. The sheer size of it made the moment surreal. Every step shook loose stones from the cliff wall. We kept firing, multiple magazines, round after round striking the same target. Finally, the giant began to slow. One shot hit its face, another struck near the eye. Then a final round hit the side of its skull. The creature collapsed forward with a thunderous impact that shook the ground beneath us. For several seconds, no one moved. Smoke drifted from our rifles as the echo of gunfire faded across the valley. Slowly, we approached the body. Up close, the scale of it was even more shocking. Its hands were enormous. Its teeth looked jagged and predatory. Its skin was thick and scarred like it had lived a violent life. Near the cave entrance, we found what remained of the missing reconnaissance team. Their gear was scattered. Their bodies were badly damaged. It was clear they had encountered the giant before we did. Within an hour, helicopters arrived. But these were not the helicopters we expected. They had no markings, no unit insignias. Men in plain tactical uniforms stepped out and immediately took control of the scene. They spoke briefly with our commanding officer, then gave orders. We were to step back. No photos, no written reports, no discussion. A massive cargo net was lowered from one of the helicopters. The giant's body was secured and lifted into the air. As the aircraft carried it away over the mountains, one of the men beside me quietly said something I've never forgotten. Whatever that thing was, it's not going in any official report. When we returned to base later that night, the incident was already rewritten. The missing patrol had supposedly been killed by insurgents. Our team had encountered hostile fighters near a cave system. End of story. Nothing about bones, nothing about a spear, nothing about a giant. And we were told very clearly to forget what we had seen. This reminds me of the Bible verse Numbers 13:33, where the spies described seeing giants in the land and said, "We seemed like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight." A reminder that the Word of God speaks about realities far deeper than we often realize.